Maybe on mute.
Oh, now I'm unmuted. All right, thank you. So welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all with us this afternoon. And it looks like we have a majority of the ESL teachers, as well as at least one ADE HSC teacher and some instructional leaders or professional developers and a couple of administrators. And I'm guessing some other folks will join us as well. So welcome all. So we're ready to work with the PowerPoint. All right, so this afternoon we are focused on new materials on Rigor, digital literacy, and career pathways. These are the new LINCS ESL Pro materials, and we're really excited to share these materials with you. So warm welcome once again to all. Today's presenters, you can see photos of us here on the screen. Betsy Parrish from Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. Heidi Wrigley from the Literacy Works International. Kathy Harris from Portland State University in Portland, Oregon. And myself, Susan Finn Miller. I am LINCS moderator. So we are really fortunate to have these preeminent leaders in our field. All three of these ladies are researchers. They're authors of numerous books and articles. They're teachers and teacher educators who specialize in adult ESL. They've provided leadership for many national initiatives related to adult ESL over the years. And they're with us here today because they're the lead developers for the ESL Pro materials. And you're going to be very excited to learn about these resources. So thank you so much, ladies, for being with us. So today is a kickoff for 3 weeks of discussion in our English language acquisition community of practice. So after today's webinar, next week we'll have a week of discussion on digital literacy with Kathy Harris. Following that, we'll have a discussion on increasing the rigor of ESL instruction with Betsy Parrish. And then the week of May 8th, we'll have a discussion with Heidi Wrigley on contextualized instruction and career pathways. So you'll want to keep that in mind and make sure that you're part of the LINCS community. If you're not already a member of the LINCS community, then you'll want to join and be sure and participate in our discussions. So we're going to focus on the overview of ESL Pro materials, which are available in 3 themes: increasing the rigor, integrating digital literacy, and contextualizing instruction for career pathways. And then we'll ask you to reflect on what you've learned through this webinar today. Our goals will be that hopefully you'll feel like you're able to describe the ESL Pro resources and to some extent, explain why, the rationale and the benefits for using these resources with teachers and for yourself, and then plan ways to draw upon these resources for professional development for yourself or for the teachers that you work with in your workplace. So we already conducted the poll, so we'll just go on to the next slide. So we'll ask you to type into the chat, take a look at the practices that are listed here and the skills and strategies that are listed on the slide, and indicate which things you use in your personal and your professional life. So we'll just take a minute for this. Go ahead and start typing which things you use in your life, either at work or for your personal life. Right, I see people starting to just type all of them, yeah. So Lori and Jesse said they use all of these strategies and employ all of these practices, or almost all of them. Diane says she uses information from the internet all the time. Kathy uses graphic organizers from time to time. Samuel says he uses the majority of these. Oh, Kim's driving and listening. Kim, you're you're typing while you're driving. Okay. So I think it's suffice it to say that most of us use a number of these, if not all of these, in our daily lives. And so it's really a fact that learners also need to employ and to enhance these skills in English to further their language development, as well as to achieve their goals related to family, community involvement, as well as work and careers. So the ESL Pro materials really focus a lot on developing and enhancing the skills that you see here in very concrete ways. So the goal for these materials really is to provide support for English language acquisition instruction. We know that we're in a time of change with regard to WIOA, so you know, the access to these materials could not be better timed, because we're talking, all of us have been talking about increasing the rigor of our instruction, increasing the integration of digital literacy, and supporting English language learners to transition onto career pathways. So once again, I think the timing is perfect, and we're lucky to have these resources available to us. So we'll ask you to consider the question that you see here. Why should we care about these things? So what are your thoughts about one or more of the reasons to focus on either rigorous instruction, digital literacy, or work and career pathways? And we'll give you a moment to share your thoughts. We're hearing that students want to improve their speaking skills, that they're interested in employment, and that enhancing the digital literacy skills will help with that. Samuel says to keep students motivated. Without digital literacy and work language, our students will not be able to compete in the world of work. Janet had a great question: who gets to decide what counts as rigor? I think that's a great question that we could discuss. I would definitely invite you, Janet, to ask that question during the discussion when Betsy's leading us the week of May 1st. Work and career, get to know our students. Yes, we get to know their students. We get to know our students. We get to understand what their personal goals are. That's a great point. So rigor not only helps with academics, but also helping students along the pathway related to their career goals. And indeed, just, the life skills and the skills that they need to interact in the community in meaningful ways. Okay, lots of digital devices. Everyone needs to deal with these. We know in our own lives it's a constant learning to keep up with the way the world is changing and how technology is changing our lives. So a lot of great ideas. So thank you for your contributions there. You can keep them coming if you like. So I want to share with you a very brief overview of what the ESL Pro materials contain. So we've already discussed that there are 3 themes, one related to rigor, enhancing the rigor of our instruction, one related to digital literacy and integrating those digital skills into our instruction, and then contextualizing ESL instruction in order to support learners along career pathways. So each of the themes includes an issue brief, and the issue brief will briefly review the literature, what we know about that topic, and provide a rationale. Why is it important to increase the rigor of our teaching? Why is it important to integrate digital literacy? And why is it important to contextualize instruction to help learners to achieve their career and work-related goals? So that's the issue brief. There's also a digital magazine, or what is also called a companion learning resource. So in the digital magazine or companion learning resource on each of these topics, you will find absolutely chock full of practical teaching suggestions and ideas. You'll find videos, you'll find curricular materials, and it's absolutely wonderful material, some of the best material I've ever seen. So definitely want to encourage you all to look into and dig into the digital magazine. And then each of the themes also includes an online module or an online course. So the online courses are self-paced, and each of our presenters will be talking a little bit more about each of these resources and what kind of, and we'll be actually demonstrating some of the material, so you'll get a little bit of a sense. And then we'll, of course, we'll continue our discussion online in our communities. So I'm going to turn it over to Betsy. And I'm going to back up the slide. Betsy, sorry.
I got it there. Thank you, Susan. Now we're going to provide you with some key background and examples of what you'll find in the ESL Pro materials. And so I'm so excited to have the chance to share this with you, and I want to thank you all for joining us. You're going to find that the materials in the companion learning resource and the modules are highly interactive with surveys, self-reflection activities, case studies, video observations, short readings, and as Susan said, the materials are self-paced, the modules are self-paced. You could do the companion learning resources on your own, but we really encourage you to use them really collaboratively with your colleagues, and then you'll have a chance to delve into all of those items in more depth if you join the community of practice coming up and the discussions we'll be having. So I'm going to focus on theme 1 in the module, in the project, which is meeting the language needs of today's English language learners. And the focus for rigorous instruction within the materials is divided into these key areas of developing academic language, language skills and strategies for accessing complex written and oral text, print, digital, and critical thinking. We want to think first about why these skills are so essential in any adult ESL curriculum. Susan mentioned some of this already, but we really want to think about the demands of work, education, home, and community that everybody faces in today's world. Development of academic language, strategies for accessing complex texts, critical thinking, things like organizing and note-taking skills will allow students to thrive in all areas of their lives. At work, they have to read charts, fill in forms, work instructions. All of these will require different types of reading strategies. They also need language for interacting effectively with coworkers, especially on teams, for example, asking for clarification, asking others' opinions or building on those opinions. To succeed in any kind of education, any further education or work-related training, adult learners need to do extensive note-taking, ask clarifying questions, and they have to employ those same kind of reading strategies that you might find in a work setting. They also have to read and write more complex nonfiction texts. They might have to write reports, they might have to write research papers. We also want to think about how the landscape of work has changed dramatically over the past several decades. In the past, the nature of jobs was often working with your hands, doing really repetitive and sometimes physically demanding jobs, and those were the engine of the economy. But today, jobs require a lot more use of oral and written language, working with complex text, more interaction with coworkers and teams, and a lot more work with digital literacy. The research tells us that low skills equal low-paying jobs, and so we have an obligation to build these skills early and often with all adult English language learners. And then just to reinforce what Susan said earlier, there are many forces, WIOA and also rigorous content standards out there that we're all faced with, and they're really transforming the way we think about adult ESL instruction. We really want to move away from the traditional life skills focus to a more academic or career focused approach, and just make more rigorous use of our instructional time. Really make that time matter and make every minute count with rich, meaty, engaging materials. Finally, we have plenty of research out there that suggests that the demands in college or any kind of post-secondary training, even training at work when you want to get a certificate, are often very different from the sorts of things that we have covered traditionally in adult education. And some research that my colleague and I did in 2010 showed us that we had some gaps in adult education, and even at the highest levels, particularly in the areas of higher order reading and listening skills, working on collaborative projects, and the use of technology. So that's why we want to focus on building those kinds of skills into our instruction. Oops, oh, I think we're missing a view here. Doesn't matter. We're missing our visual here for the overview. So before we go to that one, the module that we have for the theme of advancing the rigor of instruction provides teachers with ideas on how to incorporate academic language, this language strategies, and then critical thinking skills. Most importantly, the focus is on level appropriate and highly accessible ideas, both for the teachers and for learners. There's also opportunities for administrators to learn about these topics, but I'm going to now show you some samples that are for teachers in the module on increasing rigor of instruction. So take a look at this very typical task that you might find in one of your ESL curricula. This is a pre-reading activity in a unit on reading and writing practices that learners have. A fairly typical task where students need to match a photo to the definition, or I'm sorry, the description. So the first one using a computer or reading emails from a friend and writing a letter to friends or family. But if you look at this activity, is there much critical thinking involved? Just do a show of hands quickly. Do you see any higher order or critical thinking involved in this activity? Probably not, right? Maybe interpreting the photographs, what those are supposed to represent, would be one level of critical thinking, but not much of any critical thinking involved in this task. So in this module, we show what you could do to enhance an activity like this in pretty simple ways, but that can really add quite a bit to our instruction. Take a look at this. Instead of doing the matching, what if the teacher called out each of these reading practices and students stand next to a sign around the room? I do this in English. I do this in my first language. I don't do this. How would that add a layer of critical thinking? Take a minute and think about that. Maybe write an idea or two. How would this lesson enhancement improve the original activity? Okay, so we've got some ideas here. So let's think about it. By having the students decide, okay, they're reflecting on their own abilities. They have to think about their own practices. So one more idea, and we'll go ahead. They could use some sentence frames. Okay, so we're thinking both about how to teach these skills, but now I'm thinking in terms of a pre-reading activity, instead of, just matching pictures to ideas, students here really get to think deeply about these practices for themselves. They get to explore their prior experience with the topic. They're going to analyze situations where they could use English versus their home language. So with the option, I do this in English, I do this in my home language, it's validating the fact that there are many times and places we will use our first language both at home or in the classroom. We're challenging assumptions about, and we could be having students challenge assumptions about when they want to use English versus their first language, comparing and contrasting the benefits of each. And we're turning a very basic skills lesson into an exploration of a sociolinguistic topic of language maintenance at home, of first language maintenance at home. So that's just an example of what our lesson enhancements look like in that module. We also take you into the classroom by showing videos and giving you an opportunity to do a task while you're viewing the video. We're going to try a segment of this right now. If you go to page 7 in your handout, you'll see the visual on the right there. And let's see what are the strategies and what critical thinking does each one practice. Go ahead, Jesse, you can go ahead and start the video.
That's a service that the government
Jesse, there's no
helps us
sound
do.
on the video.
It's a service. The hospital is a service. Thank you.
Meaningful grouping of words helps both learning and memory.
Bicycle riding, maybe in the
Good.
park.
Good, I hear it.
Sorting ideas.
Are you hearing it now?
Critical thinking. As
Yes.
learners analyze where to place church among the 3 categories.
What about what's left? Church. What is church? Recreation? Service? You tell me what? Recreation or service? You can decide.
What do you guys think? Is this positive or negative? Positive. Why?
In this advanced reading lesson, learners are working with vocabulary from a text on birth order theory, analyzing and justifying why a personality trait is positive, negative, or either.
They make it perfect? Okay. They take care of their family. Do they do a good job or bad job? Good job. Anybody here think it's a negative thing?
Sometimes it's negative being so professional. Yeah.
Why is it negative?
Pushy.
Yeah.
It's too pushy, too strong.
Stress out.
They're always stressed. So should I put a positive, negative, or either?
So on the side, you see that there are 3 names, Julia, Betsy, and Sina. Those are the 3 different people that we just watched. Okay?
In this intermediate listening lesson on cultural differences, learners need to listen selectively as they fill in missing information on a grid.
How is it different in their country, and how do they feel about the practice?
This strategy allows for different levels of interpretation depending on the levels of the learners in the class. Learners also listen for attitude, how the speakers feel about a custom.
I've lived in the United States for over 20 years now, but one of the first things that struck me when I came here has to do with food and eating habits. The first thing that struck me was how people eat in the street and in public.
In filling in the grid, learners determine what information is important. Listening to these short, authentic talks and taking notes also replicates what learners would encounter in a training or academic setting. A graphic organizer is a visual display that depicts the relationships between facts, terms, or ideas. There are as many types of graphic organizers as there are ways to use them. In the following segments, we will see how graphic organizers allow students to organize their ideas, practice critical thinking, and show the overall organization of a text. We'll look at Venn diagrams, T-charts, and tree diagrams.
Okay. So if you could, show your hand, raise your hand, if you saw an activity in there that you could see using with your own students, an idea for an activity. And also, write, or you can, in the chat, 1 or 2 words. We just haven't, I'm going to hand you over to Susan and to Kathy in a minute. What have you tried with success already? What's something you've tried with success already? Be thinking about that. Those are the kinds of questions that we ask of participants in the module, in the companion learning resource, and in the brief as well. So you're always thinking about how could these activities apply to my setting, which is why it's so much better to do it along with other teachers. So this just gives you a snapshot of the kinds of activities that you'll find in the materials. And clearly from your response here, these are not new for you. It's just maybe thinking about them through a different lens and just thinking about the ways that they can really provide more rigorous instruction. So now Kathy is going to share with you ideas from the Integrating Digital Literacy suite of materials.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to add my welcome to Betsy and Susan. I'm thrilled that you're here, and I'm glad to be able to be sharing with you the materials in the ESL Pro suite of materials. Hopefully someone will let me know if you can't hear me. So I want to talk a little bit about, first, what is digital literacy? Because that's something that we kind of all mean something different when we say digital literacy. So I want to start with the definition. And this is a definition from the U.S. Department of Education, and it's used in the WIOA legislation. But I want to unpack this a little bit. So first of all, we want to talk about digital literacy as the skills associated with using technology. So this is the very basic things like how to use a mouse or a touchpad, how to open, save, and close files, how to write emails, how to add attachments, how to open a browser, open a tab, go back, these kinds of very basic things. So that's part of it for sure. But then it's also using those basic things to find, evaluate, and organize information. So like how to use the internet to find information, to evaluate its relevance and its trustworthiness, and whether it's fake news, for example, and then organize that information to be useful in answering a question or solving a problem. So actually doing something with that information. So that's part of it too. But it's also using those skills to not just gather information, but to be a participant, to be a knowledge creator in the interactive web environment. I mean, Web 2.0 allows us all to be authors, right? So, for example, our students might want to participate in some kind of neighborhood action. For example, volunteering to get out the vote, or writing email to a child's teacher, or messaging their healthcare provider, or expressing an opinion in a community forum. So having digital literacy allows our students an opportunity to have a voice on the internet, not just get information. So I want to emphasize that this is a two-way participation process, not just one way. It's not just getting stuff, it's also creating stuff and being knowledge creators. So digital literacy is important in every realm of life for all of us. Adult English language learners are faced with literacy tasks that must be accomplished with digital literacy skills. All of these different things that students might need to be able to do. They might need to communicate with their child's teacher, apply for a job online, make a presentation at work or school, access their patient health portal to check test results, pay a medical bill, or make a medical appointment. In today's world, these tasks are increasingly digital. So we can't ignore, and we mustn't ignore, that literacy in the modern world is digital as well. So not only do we have digital literacy tasks required like these, but collaboration is an overlay that increasingly is being required. So for example, collaborative writing, collaborative meetings, collaborative presentations, telemedicine, the need to collaborate in digital spaces is becoming essential. So there's a whole set of things that we have to think about that really are part of literacy. It's not something separate, it's literacy. All right, so in all of the materials that we created in the ESL Pro materials, the definition of digital literacy that I've been using is the organizing structure. The material is divided into these areas. In the online module, which has 4 units, it's called Integrating Digital Literacy into Adult English Language Instruction. And everybody starts, when they use this module, they start with a basic digital literacy called Digital Literacy in Our Lives. And it's not just about what is basic digital literacy, but it's about what do the students need, but what do the teachers do? Because it's our own digital literacy as well. In the second unit, after Unit 1, users can use any of the units in any order. The second one is Information and Communication Technologies for Language Learning. So how does technology help move our language learning forward? And this one's organized around listening, speaking, reading, writing, and vocabulary. Then there's digital information literacy. So how do our students access and evaluate information online? Or how do we, for that matter? And the last one is solving problems in technology-rich environments. So basically, more in a more complex way, the problems in our world often involve technology. But how do we use technology and work with technology in solving problems? So these units, as well as the issue brief and the digital magazine, can be used in any number of ways based on how a state, a region, or a program, or even a teacher wants to do it. This online module, or part of it, can be the read-in, for example, for professional development, either face-to-face, online, or blended. I mean, I believe, from my experience, that blended is the most effective. Throughout the module, this module, teachers and administrators develop their own digital skills while they're learning how to integrate digital literacy and how digital skills are part of literacy into adult English language programs. Developing our own digital skills is part of learning how to integrate digital literacy into instruction and programs. All right, so let's look at an example. In this case, we're going to look at the example of forms. I want you to type into the chat box what are some of the forms that you fill out in your everyday life. I want you to think about your child's education or your own education, employment, education and training, health, etc. So what are some of the forms that you have to fill out? So start thinking about that. So for me, I have to fill out forms in my patient portal. It seems like they're always asking me to fill out forms. And I had to enroll my child in school online. But what are some of the things that you have to do? Yep, these forms, students bring in surveys for work, other kinds of forms, right? Health histories. Yep. Medical histories for sure. Voting online for faculty committees. Oh yes, we just evaluated our chair duties. So all these kinds of things, people are trying to get input and they do it through forums. So in addition to online forums, yes, online webinars like today, in addition to online or to paper forms, these things happen online increasingly more and more and more. So while we experience this, our students experience this as well. When we use forms in class, we have to understand we have to use them online as well. Yeah, all job applications are online as well, paying bills, all of that. So what I would like to do is show you then, if Susan would put the link into the chat, go to this form on the link in the chat. Susan just posted a link. Go to that link and fill out this online form. I'll give you just a minute to do that. Everybody do that. Fill out this online form. You'll notice, I want you to notice that the form uses the same language as the question that you answered in the chat a minute ago. And that's pretty important. There we go. Hopefully you can go too far forward. There we go. So there are many different forms that we have to fill out, and our students do too. Some of them you put in the chat, and here's some others. And it's part of being literate these days, not just digitally literate, but literate. The online module talks about ways to take one task, in this case, forms, and integrate it across many units, making it part of the unit routine. That way it's predictable for students and teachers, and they can build their skills. The vocabulary and the grammar is already part of the lesson or unit, so only the digital form is different. Like in the digital form that you filled out, only the format was different. The language was the same. So this is the integration approach that's taken in the materials that are in the LINC ESL Pro on digital literacy. You take one type of digital task and you do it as part of the units that you're doing for your class. So forms is a very easy one that can be done at every level. I've done this with literacy students in my own ESL classes. Other kinds of things that are appropriate at different levels would be take a presentation and do a Google presentation or some kind of online presentation for each unit. It could be anything from a very simple vocabulary presentation with 2 slides to something more complex. An internet search, writing an email, posting on social media, creating a collaborative document, writing a collaborative paragraph, for example, creating an infographic, or some kind of problem-based activity. So the approach taken here is that digital literacy is part of literacy, and how can we as teachers, program administrators, integrate a digital tool as part of the instruction that we're already doing to leverage what students are already learning so they can have a new digital tool and a digital skill. So over time, they build those digital skills. So that's the focus of the digital literacy materials in this suite of materials. And I think now I will move it on to Haida. Take it away, Haida.
Okay, here's Haida, who had to unmute herself real quickly. I'm Haida Spook-Wrigley, and I've been developing the online materials for contextualization and career pathways, but I definitely want to get a shout out to Jamie Adelson Goldstein, who developed the companion materials and the digital magazine that really goes deeper. So next. Jesse, okay. You may be wondering, what's the big deal with contextualization? Have we not been doing this all of our lives, those of us who've been in the field for quite a long time? The old definition of contextualization basically meant that we moved away from grammar-based teaching to life skills. We introduced content-based instruction in terms of work. Many of us remember vocational English as a second language, English for special purposes. So what's new really? What is new is the new definitions emphasize that it's not just skills for work in general, but that what we look at is opportunities for students to develop skills for in-demand jobs with an eye towards moving out of, dead-end occupations into occupations that can support a family. And Betsy has talked a little bit about the changing picture of careers and work. Next. One of the things that we all know, if you're working with immigrants and refugees, that most immigrants and refugees are indeed working, and most of them are working in dead-end jobs or entry-level jobs. That's true not only for low-skilled immigrants, but also for higher-skilled immigrants. So one way out of these dead-end jobs is to get a certificate. 2 years of college or even just a few months of college and a certificate really ups the chances of getting a good job at good wages. And that's kind of the rallying cry for engaging students in thinking about what their next step might be in terms of work. It also answers the English for what question. Janet Isolas, a longtime friend, reminded me that I used to say, life is short, but ESL is long. Right? So it helps us focus our instruction for those students who are in the workforce and who are trying to figure out how could I possibly afford to go to training or spend, 7 levels of ESL before I can get into a Department of Labor funded training. So it kind of truncates the effort and allows students to move through the system towards where they would like to go. I do need to add that there's a lot of students who are not in the workforce, and for those students, the effort on career and work might be not right. It would be off-putting to assume that everybody is in a pathway mode, and I look forward to discussing this further with you during our community of practice and get into what do you do if you have a mixed class, if that's one of your questions. So I already mentioned that it's both foreign-born professionals are underemployed. This is where the issue of brain waste comes in, and that's something we can touch on. How do you develop articulated programs that differentiate between people who come in with high levels of education and those who really still need to develop academic skills in order to succeed in training? Next. What I'm excited about is that now finally, we've all been talking about the need for case management, and finally there is funding available to hire somebody in your program who can act as a career navigator to not only help people figure out what might be the next step program and how do I get there, but who can also act as a life coach. That our students lead complex lives and stuff happens that make it difficult to commit to an intensive program or to even come to class on a regular basis. So that's a great new position, and we can talk about what kind of support you think your students need in order to be successful and who might provide that so you don't have to do it all. Next. All right, so the career pathway, what's involved and what does it look like? As I mentioned, at the center is the opportunities for students to get a certificate in an area that counts. So not flower arranging, clearly, but a security certificate. So you can work in the store with a gun or without a gun. As you walk into the drugstore and somebody stands there, that person hopefully has a certificate and knows what to do when bad things happen. Welding can be certificate. Certified nursing assistants. And so what all is involved as part of that certificate model that creates a pathway? There is the old English for special purposes, only this time it's focused on the next step program and how to prepare students. And also contextualized learning that looks at what does it take to be successful in a particular career and what you want to be in that career in the first place. What are ups and downs of particular jobs? What's a good job? What's not such a good job? So we're hoping there can be lots of rich discussions with your students. Who are you working for? And are some employers just better employers than others? And how would you decide? Next. Blended instruction makes sense for students with higher level skills who may have some college from the home country but still are underemployed, having them do some of the work through a self-paced model, independent learning, at the same time where there may be a workshop where they get together and talk about how difficult it is to really succeed in a new environment and the pain and the anxiety of moving along, and the phrase that we've heard in refugee resettlement all the time, this I used to be somebody. So how do you help somebody who used to be somebody in their village or their town readjust to a place where they are basically identified as somebody who doesn't speak much English, and that becomes their identity in the face of others, in the eyes of others. Next. Integrated education and training that brings together English for special purposes and technical instruction through various models, and we'll talk about those. And next. Collaboration with a training provider so that ESL is no longer standalone, right? So English is necessary but not sufficient if students are going to get jobs that pay a decent wage. So for all of us to find somebody who has a training, who offers training with instructors who really care about the students, who know how to work with students who are not fluent in English, becomes a real trick. And next. So I have a little bit of a poll here. Here's your chance to let us know how ready are you or your program to take this on. Not just English for Work for general, a lot of us have done that, but really start moving people into that pathway path. So, question, we have a good relationship with a program that offers certificate training, right? So yes, absolutely. No, not really. And the third one, we have outlined what students need to know and be able to do. Where are you on this one? And we have the last one. So we got quite a few people who are, actually the majority, who are on the we are sort of ready side. So if you can afford the time, if you're interested in discussions, if you want to learn more, so this might be the group for you where you can go both through the online materials, the digital magazine, and then we will have a week-long of discussion around the topics that are particularly important to you and your program. All right, let's move on. Right, so we've done that, and the next slide. Just so you know what you find in this particular online module, organized the same way as the other ones. Unit 1 provides background. What is the RIOA contextualization all about? What program should we design? This is for administrators and others who are interested in the IBEST model, concurrent instruction. Unit 3, if you're a teacher, we got lots of great ideas on teaching and learning tasks, videos, and more. And Unit 4, if you're trying to figure out how do we know if we're successful and how can we tell that students are really moving along and know what they need to know, that would be Unit 4 for you. And next. Okay. Unit 1, as I was mentioning, has some key concepts and terminology so that you can intelligently discuss what it means to have a career pathway, and maybe you can be the go-to person in your program who says, hey, I know all about this, or at least quite a bit about it, or at least more than other people. So that's a quick definition. Here is one of the models, concurrent instruction, and as part of our discussions and online, we sort out what the different models might look like. Here is one where the ESL instructor works in coordination with a technical skills or occupational skills instructor, and they develop their curriculum jointly, or at least talk to each other, and the learning experience that students get is hopefully integrated. From there, they go to an industry-recognized certificate and hopefully a good job or more training. I want to spend a little bit of time on the instructional strategies that are highlighted in that Unit 3. Okay. I think knowing what students know becomes really important, particularly in career pathways. And one of the things that we're seeing that a lot of the good teaching and talking to students about their experiences and their knowledge and their opinions all of a sudden goes out the window as we all move towards, let's teach that vocabulary, let's teach that passive that they will need in order to understand training materials. I think for all of us, whether technical instructor or not, it becomes important to ask people so what they think and what they have done or not done and why. So one of the things we have is a video that shows students, displaced workers, talk about their first job and whether it was a good job or not, and then little surveys that people can do with each other. What was your first job? Involve people in the agency and start getting a dialogue going about what job is desirable and what to do when bad things happen to good people, right? Work theft, or salary theft is an issue, and so that you can bring in worker rights and students' questions and experiences along with that, even though it may not be part of the official curriculum. It won't be if you use a textbook. Okay, using multimedia, there's lots of videos and other videos in the digital magazines so that learning becomes visible, and we can use these videos as a prompt for discussion along with skills building like, listening comprehension. In the materials, we really emphasize social learning, task-based learning that has students solve a problem, give an opinion, talk to each other peer-to-peer, either in small groups or with a partner. And so having students negotiate and work collaboratively every day in the classroom becomes a way of building those, team building skills, but at the same time really validate students' experiences as they share information with each other. I think it's important to know whether what your students can do so that they themselves can see that they're learning more. So we have quick checks that use signal cards so students can show, yes, I agree or I disagree, or I think this statement is true or false, and can-do lists that let students say, yeah, I can do this if you help me, or I can do this by myself, or no way can I do this, so that both students and teachers know where they stand. Finally, we have project-based learning. We ask all of our students to get involved in a project as part of the work that we're doing around career pathways. So in the end, they may end up looking at body parts. This is the picture that you see, and each group does a project on a separate body part. Actually, my screen went blank. So Jesse, if you could go to the picture on the scenarios, which would be the last picture on my things. Using scenarios is something we discussed in the materials and would love to discuss with you. It basically allows students to see a story, to hear a story, you tell the story, retell it to make sure they get their version of it, and then talk about how they might solve a problem. So it may be that too many people are asking you too many things to do at work at the same time, or it may be that you're late for a lunch because you're preparing for your wedding, and certainly people should understand that, but your boss doesn't. So those would be the kind of problem-solving scenarios that we would have, that we would love to discuss with you and with others during the community of practice, but also hoping that you will discuss them with your colleagues as you watch the online materials jointly, perhaps. Okay. I still have a blank screen, but I'm hoping I can hear everyone, and so I'm turning it back over to Susan.
Thank you, Haida. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Betsy, for giving us a brief overview of the ESL Pro resources and materials. And we wanted to open it up for questions. We have about 5 minutes left, so before we wrap things up, if people have questions, please type your question in the chat. One question that came up earlier that's not a surprise at all is, how would I use these materials and these ideas with the literacy level students? Is it possible to actually have a rigorous lesson with the very lowest level students? Kathy mentioned that she's done online forums with literacy level learners, so I'll open it up to Kathy, Haida, or Betsy, who would like to take that?
This is Kathy. Yeah, I'd love to address that because I think if anything, digital tools allow low literacy learners an opportunity to participate in language activities before they have the skills to do it, maybe in writing. So I think, if anything, it's really helpful to bring digital skills into low literacy environments. I did it successfully. I mean, I think the key is using the language in the unit that you're doing, and then the only thing that's different is the form or the whatever. I've used forms with literacy students. The other thing is, making sure it's part of the routine. Like having the digital time, the time on some kind of device is part of the routine. And both of those things make it possible for literacy students to bring digital literacy into their repertoire.
This is Betsy.
Thanks. That's great. Go ahead, Betsy.
Yeah. Another example is the one question interview.
Betsy, you're breaking up.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Sure yeah, that's better. Not now. I'm sorry, we're having trouble here. I don't know why. But you were talking about the one question interview, and I know you're going to talk a lot about that and explain that and demonstrate that during your week of discussion. It's one of the most effective strategies that I personally have used with beginners. So yeah, it's a really wonderful technique to include. There's so much to say about that, so I wish we had time to say more, but we'll definitely have more time during our weeks of discussion with our wonderful facilitators. So I think we better wrap up given the time. So if you would take a moment to type into the chat a takeaway from this webinar, and we already invited you to ask a question, so if you do have a question, please go ahead and contribute that as well. Any questions that we are not able to answer today, we will definitely be able to answer during our weeks of discussion with our facilitators. So any questions you pose here we'll definitely take up during the appropriate week. And you know, it's going to be a really great time of learning. So this is just a kickoff, and we're going to continue for the next 3 weeks on in the English language acquisition community. So I'll just invite people to go ahead and type in whatever is one of your main takeaways. So these were the goals that we set out for this afternoon, and hopefully you feel somewhat prepared to describe the resources, to explain the rationale and benefits, and also to begin to plan ways to draw upon these resources. So I definitely want to remind everybody to join us in the ELA COP to learn more. So just to remind everyone, the week of April 24th, which starts next Monday, Kathy will be with us to discuss in more depth the digital literacy, integrating digital literacy. The week after that, starting May 1st, Betsy will focus on increasing rigor. And then following Betsy's week, we'll have Haida discussing contextualized instruction and career pathways. So we're really just getting started with our topic, and if you're not, I'm guessing that probably everybody is already involved in LINKS, but if you're not, you know, please sign up. LINKS is a wonderful resource. We talked about the amazing resources that are available to us through ESL Pro, but there are many, many other resources in the resource collection. There's, of course, our communities of practice and the learning portal, where the online module for ESL Pro is housed along with other online courses that are available to anybody for free, and they're all extremely high quality. And then, of course, LINKS has a professional development center. So we're also on social media. And we want to thank everybody for being here. Feel free to contact us. The contact information is there. And we will continue our discussion online. So we'll look for you there. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
weekend.
For those of you who want to hang on, I will just flip the screen back a moment to let you download the handout that was referenced earlier if you didn't get it. There is also a survey we'd like you to fill out. It's right here. The link is in the chat box. And the presenters and the date are right there. So if you don't mind filling out the quick survey, it'll take about 2 minutes. That would be much appreciated. And I'm also going to flip us back to the intro slide so that those of you who didn't get the, I'll put the link in here too. Those of you who didn't get the handout can download it. All you do is go to the left-hand corner of the page and click on where it says ESL Pro Overview LINKS Webinar Handout.
Click on that. When it turns blue, the download files button should appear, and then go ahead and click on that, and that will let you download the document that was referenced today. I'll leave this up for a few minutes so that anyone can download. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thanks, Betsy, for being available to help us with the tech support. Much appreciated.
Oh, of course.
And thanks to our presenters. You guys all did a wonderful job, and we'll look forward to our ongoing conversations. Thank you for giving